A powerful lord sits across from a traveling swordsman in a lantern-lit room. He offers him everything: position, land, the protection of one of the largest houses in Japan. The swordsman, dirty from the road, carrying nothing but a wrapped blade, listens without expression. The lord leans forward. "Name your terms." The swordsman looks at him for a long moment and says, "I have none." The lord smiles, the way powerful men smile when they believe they have finally found the price. But he will not find it. Not because the swordsman is proud, not because he is hiding his true demand behind a performance of indifference, because the swordsman has done something almost no man in history has been willing to do. He has removed the handles. Here is the truth. No one who holds power over you wants you to understand. You are not controlled by strong men. You are controlled by what you want from them. Every person who has ever manipulated you, a boss, a rival, a merchant, a man in a position of influence over some part of your life, did it through the same mechanism. They found what you wanted or what you feared losing, and they made the wanting, or the losing, contingent on your compliance. Remove the wanting, remove the fear of losing, and the lever disappears in their hand. This is Miyamoto Musashi's most dangerous principle, the one that was dangerous to the lords who would have employed him, dangerous to the rivals who would have defeated him, dangerous to the entire structure of a society built on leverage. He wrote it quietly, in the cave, house near the end of his life. Have no fondness, have no aversion, accept everything as it is. 9 words. The handle removed. The handle you do not know you are carrying. His name was Ichiro. He was 28 years old, and he was, by any external measure, rising. He had been taken into a minor lord's household as a retainer 3 years before, given a small stipend, assigned modest duties, and promised, in the careful language of men who make promises without saying them directly, that more was coming. He believed it. He had every reason to. He worked harder than the other retainers, arrived earlier, stayed later, performed every small task with the particular diligence of a man who understood that each small task was a test, and each test was being watched. His lord, a man named Yoritaka, noticed, praised him, gave him, gradually, more responsibility. And Ichiro, who had come from nothing and had watched his family struggle for generations, felt the slow opening of a door he had been standing outside his entire life. He began to relax. He began to trust. He began, without noticing, to arrange his entire interior life around the continuation of what was happening. That arrangement, invisible to him, automatic, the ordinary human response to the arrival of something good, was the handle. He did not know he had handed it to anyone. He did not know that the moment his happiness became dependent on the continuation of his rise, he had placed in someone else's hand the one tool required to move him, the threat of reversal, the withdrawal of what he had come to want. The moment came on an autumn afternoon. Yoritaka called him in, spoke to him with the usual warmth, and then, almost casually, with the tone of a man making a small request between friends, asked Ichiro to do something. It was not, on its face, monstrous. It was small, administrative, a favor involving another retainer, reporting on a conversation Ichiro had overheard, in a way that would damage the other man's standing. The other retainer had done nothing wrong. Ichiro knew this, and he also knew, with the specific clarity of a man who is being tested and recognizes the test, that if he refused, something would change. Not all at once, not dramatically, but the door that had been slowly opening would begin, quietly, to close. He did it. He told himself many things about why. That the other man was not particularly important, that the damage would be minor, that in the long arc of his own rising, one small compromise was not worth losing everything he had worked toward. All of this was true. All of this was beside the point. The point was that in the moment he chose, he had confirmed, to himself, to Yoritaka, to some older part of him that was watching from a place he had not yet learned to hear, that he was available. Available to be moved, available to be used, available to do things he would not otherwise do in exchange for things he had come to need. And a man who is available is not a man. He is an instrument. 3 months later, Yoritaka asked him to do something larger. Ichiro did it. 6 months later, something larger still. He did that too. The humiliation came on a winter morning. He was walking through the outer courtyard when he passed an older retainer, a man named Shoji, who had served the house for 30 years. Shoji did not speak to him, did not look at him, walked past him with the particular quality of not seeing that older men reserve for younger men they have concluded are no longer worth engaging. Ichiro stopped, turned. "Shoji-san." The old man paused, did not turn fully. "Ichiro, have I done something to offend you?" Shoji was quiet for a moment. Then, without turning, in the plainest voice Ichiro had ever heard from him, "No, you have done exactly what was asked of you. That is the offense." He walked away. Ichiro stood in the cold courtyard for a long time. The winter light was thin and gray. The wind moved through the bare branches of the garden's trees, and he felt, for the first time, the full weight of what he had been building. He was rising. He was also no longer his own. He was doing, daily, things that the man he had been 3 years ago would have refused. He had not noticed the change because the change had arrived incrementally, one small compromise at a time. Each one justified, each one survivable, each one another quarter turn of a handle he had not known was there. Yoritaka was not a cruel lord. Yoritaka did not need to be cruel, because Ichiro had given him, freely, without recognizing the giving, everything required to move him: the wanting, the dependence, the fear of losing what had been granted. Shoji had seen it years before Ichiro had. He walked out of the courtyard that evening, not dramatically, not with a formal resignation or a scene that would be remembered and told. He walked. He reached the outer gate, passed through it, and then kept walking until the lights of the house were gone behind him. He did not know yet what he was doing. He only knew that the walking itself was the first free act he had performed in 2 years. And somewhere on that road, in the cold, carrying nothing but the clothes he was wearing and a single blade, a thought arrived. I have to find the man who can teach me how to not need this again. He did not yet know the man's name, but the road, as roads sometimes do when a man has finally become ready to walk them honestly, was already bringing him closer. The man who carried nothing. The man's name was Shigen. He was old, perhaps 70, and he lived in a small dwelling near the edge of a mountain village that did not appear on any formal map. Ichiro found him by following a rumor that had traveled through the mouths of men who did not know each other but knew the same thing, that somewhere in the mountains there was a man who had refused, across a long life, every offer of patronage, every formal position, every handle that the world had tried to place on him. Ichiro walked for 6 weeks. He arrived with cracked feet and the thin exhaustion of a man who had been sleeping poorly for months. Shigen was outside, splitting wood. He did not look up. "You have come a long way," he said. "Sit." Ichiro sat. Shigen finished the log, set down the axe, turned, looked at Ichiro with a gaze that did not measure, simply saw. "You carried something here," he said. "Very little. I left most of it behind. Not the things, the handle. You brought the handle with you." Ichiro waited. "You escaped a lord who was using it. You did not yet remove it. Until you do, you will find another lord. Or he will find you." He picked up the wood. "Come inside. I will make tea." This is the thing almost no one understands about control. Escaping the controller does not solve the problem, because the problem is not the controller, the problem is the handle, the specific place inside a man where the world can reach in and move him. Remove the controller, keep the handle, and the world will, with unfailing reliability, send you another controller within the year, because handles are visible. Skilled men see them the way a hunter sees tracks. Shigen made tea. "Tell me about the handle," he said. "Not the Lord? The handle," Ichiro thought. "I wanted to rise. I wanted security, standing. A life different from the one I came from. Yes. The wanting made me move in whatever direction the wanting could be satisfied. Yes. But wasn't that normal? Isn't that what every man wants?" Shigen set down his cup. "The wanting is not the problem," he said. "The attachment to the outcome is the problem. A man can want something deeply and still be free. A man who needs the wanting to be satisfied in a specific way by a specific source, that man is no longer free. He looked at Ichiro, and he has given the key to his life to whoever controls the source. Musashi wrote the principle plainly: have no fondness, have no aversion. He did not mean feel nothing. He meant need nothing. Hold the preferences lightly, enjoy the good, accept the difficult, but do not let the preferences become attachments. Now, do not let the attachments become dependencies, because dependence is the only real currency in the economy of control. The man who depends on nothing cannot be bought, cannot be threatened, cannot be moved by the promise of more or the fear of less. He is free. Shigen gave Ichiro a practice. For 3 months, live here. Work the way I work. Eat what I eat. Sleep on what I sleep on. And every time you notice yourself wanting something, I want you to do one thing. What? Ask whether you would still do what is right if that thing were taken away. If the wanting could never be satisfied. Yes, would you still do right? Or is your ability to do right dependent on continuing to receive what you want? He looked at Ichiro. If it is dependent, you have found a handle. Name it. Examine it. Decide whether it deserves to remain. The first month was the hardest. Not because the work was difficult, because Ichiro began to discover, one small revelation at a time, how many handles he had. He had not known there were so many. The desire for praise, the desire for comfort at the end of a long day, the desire for small recognitions, the desire for Shigen to eventually say, with some warmth, that he was doing well. Each, minor in isolation, was a handle, a place where, if Shigen had wanted, he could have pressed. And noticing them one by one, Ichiro understood something about his former lord that he had not been able to see from inside the house. Yoritaka had not been a manipulator. Yoritaka had been an ordinary man. Ordinary men find handles the way water finds cracks. Not through strategy, through the simple, unreliable pressure of their own interests meeting another man's available dependencies. Handles are not pressed by villains. They are pressed by anyone whose purposes happen to intersect with yours, which is to say, almost everyone. The second month, something shifted. Not the removal of the wanting, the loosening of the wanting. Ichiro still enjoyed Shigen's rare words of quiet approval, still noticed the small pleasure of a good meal, but the grip had loosened. If the approval did not come, he was still well. If the meal was poor, he was still well. The wanting was there. The dependence was not. He told Shigen, "That is the first stage," the old man said. "Detachment from the small handles. Now we begin on the large ones." "The large ones?" "The ones that take years, the ones most men never address." He set down his tea. "These are the handles that make most men into instruments, and removing them is the work of a lifetime." But there was one handle, the deepest, the most invisible, that Shigen had not yet spoken of, because it cannot be addressed until the smaller handles have been loosened. And Ichiro, who was beginning to feel, for the first time in years, what it is like to walk through a day without a hand on his shoulder, was almost ready to meet it. Almost. The final handle. Shigen waited until the 4th month to speak of it, not because he was testing Ichiro, because the handle he was about to name could only be heard by a man who had already loosened the smaller ones. They were sitting outside in the evening. The air was cool. The mountain light was going. Shigen had been silent for a long time. Then, on without preamble. "What do you fear losing most?" Ichiro thought. The old answers, position, security, approval, were gone. Something deeper surfaced, slower to arrive, harder to look at directly. "My life," he said finally. Shigen nodded once. "Yes, that is the final handle. This is the one most men never address. Because it does not look like a handle. It looks like basic, reasonable, ordinary self-preservation, the normal human desire to continue existing. But it is a handle, the deepest one. The one every other handle is ultimately connected to, because a man who will do anything to preserve his life can be made to do anything. Threaten him with enough, and he will do anything. Offer him enough to avoid enough, and he will do anything. The attachment to continued existence is the master handle. And as long as it grips him completely, every other handle can be connected to it through sufficient pressure. Musashi understood this. It is why, Across 60 duels, he was impossible to manipulate in the way other swordsmen were manipulable. Other swordsmen could be intimidated, pressured, moved into unfavorable positions by opponents who understood that a man fighting to stay alive fights differently than a man who has, in some deep place, released that grip. Musashi fought like a man who had already made peace with the possibility of not surviving the encounter. Not recklessly, not suicidally, completely present. Which is what a man becomes when he is no longer using half his attention to manage the terror of losing what he has. He wrote it in the most quoted line of all the Book of Five Rings: accept everything just as it is, including, most especially, the fact that nothing, including yourself, is permanent. Ichiro sat with this. So what is the practice? It is not the same practice as the smaller handles. You cannot loosen the final handle by examining it from outside. You can only loosen it by walking toward what it is protecting you from, which is the fact that you are going to die. He said it plainly. Not someday, not in the abstract, at the end of a specific road whose length you do not know. This is the second myth that must break. The myth that freedom comes from accumulating enough resources, skill, protection, to secure your existence against disruption. No accumulation is ever enough. The man who needs to feel secure will always find new disruptions to secure against, and every increase in what he has increases the surface area of what he can lose. He has not reduced his handles, he has multiplied them. Real freedom is not the absence of things that could be taken from you. It is the absence of terror at the taking. Shigen gave Ichiro the final practice. Every morning, sit 10 minutes and look directly at the fact that this day might be the last. Not as morbid contemplation, as simple recognition. This day might be the last. What would I want it to contain? What would I refuse to do, regardless of what was threatened? Who would I wish to have been when I walked through it? Not to produce anxiety, to produce clarity. To make every decision of the day a decision made by a man who has already accepted the deepest loss, and therefore cannot be moved by the threat of it. The man who has made peace with his death, Shigen said, cannot be controlled by anyone. The ultimate threat has already been neutralized. Everything smaller has no leverage over a man who has accepted the largest. Why forbidden? Because every structure of power in the world requires men to be gripped by this final handle. Remove that attachment, and you have removed the mechanism by which almost all control operates. He looked at the mountain. A man who has released the final handle is not more dangerous to others. He is dangerous to the systems that move men through fear. Ichiro began the practice the next morning. The first days were uncomfortable. The mind resisted. Found other things to think about. Returned to the small problems of the day rather than the large fact beneath them. He returned it gently to the question. This day might be the last. Who do I wish to be inside it? By the end of the first month, something had settled. Not resignation, not grim acceptance. Something closer to lightness. The lightness of a man who had stopped carrying a weight he had not known he was carrying. Because the fear of loss is a weight. And it is heaviest precisely when a man has not looked at it directly. Looked at honestly every morning without flinching. It becomes lighter. Not because the fact changes, because the man changes. He stood in a mountain field one morning, after his sitting. The light was coming up. He felt something he had not felt in his entire adult life. Nothing could be taken from me that I had not already given up. Not through grandiosity, not through performance of detachment, through the simple, patient, daily practice of accepting what was true. He was going to die. Sometime, on some day, without warning. And in the meantime, this day, this morning, this one available light, was entirely, completely, unshakably his, because there was nothing left in it for anyone to take from him, except by ending it. And he had already accepted the ending. But accepting the ending was not the destination, it was the clearing of the ground, what Ichiro built on that cleared ground over the years that followed, and the single quiet encounter that proved, finally, what the forbidden rule had actually made him. That is where this story arrives at its last, quietest turn. The man with no handles. Ichiro stayed with Shigen for 2 years, not training in the formal sense, just living, splitting wood, drawing water, sitting in the morning. And somewhere in those 2 years, the practice stopped being a practice and started being what he was. He did not notice the crossing. Men rarely do. He left the mountain on a morning in early spring. Shigen was outside when he left. He did not give instructions, did not give a farewell speech, did not offer any of the ceremony that old teachers are sometimes expected to offer students who have been with them long enough to become something. He simply looked at Ichiro and said, "The road is open." Ichiro bowed once, began walking. He did not know where he was going. This too was different. 2 years before, he had walked with a destination, a plan, a specific idea of what he was looking for and what finding it would mean. Now he walked simply because the road was there, without the grip of arrival, without the handle that had once been attached to every journey he had ever taken. The encounter that would prove what the forbidden rule had built in him came 6 months later, in a town he had not chosen to visit, at an inn he had not planned to stay at. A lord was passing through, a man of some power with retainers and attendants and the particular atmosphere that surrounds men who have learned to carry authority as an ordinary weight. He heard about Ichiro, not by name, by reputation, the small, slow-traveling reputation that men with a particular quality accumulate without seeking. There is a man at the inn who travels alone, who owns nothing, who will accept no patronage and no gifts. The Lord was intrigued. He sent for Ichiro. Ichiro came, not because the Lord had summoned him, because he was not at that moment doing anything else. He entered the room with the unhurried quality of a man who was carrying nothing he was afraid of losing and nothing he was hoping to gain. The Lord studied him, offered tea, spoke for a while of unimportant things, the weather, the condition of the roads, the small news of the province, then gradually approached the purpose. "I am told you refuse patronage." "I do not refuse, I simply do not accept." "What is the difference?" Ichiro considered the question. A man who refuses has a position. A man who does not accept has simply gone in a different direction. The Lord smiled. "A clever answer." "It is not clever. It is accurate." The Lord leaned forward slightly. "I would like you to accept mine. I know, that is why you sent for me. And your answer?" Ichiro set down his cup, not dramatically, just set it down. "My answer is that there is nothing you can offer me that I need, and nothing you can threaten me with that I fear. This is not a position, it is the condition I live in, and it would be dishonest of me to enter an arrangement in which you believed you had some hold on me that does not exist." The Lord was quiet for a long moment. He had expected many things. He had not expected this, not arrogance. Arrogance he could read. Arrogance was a handle. A man who needs to feel superior can be controlled by having his superiority confirmed or denied at strategic moments. This was not arrogance. This was something else. The simple, flat, undecorated statement of a man who had arrived at his condition honestly and was reporting it the way one reports weather. "What if I were to threaten you?" the Lord asked. He said it as a question of philosophy, not a real threat. The particular question a powerful man sometimes asks when he has encountered, for the first time in a while, something he cannot read. "You could," said Ichiro, "and the outcome would be whatever the outcome was. My death, if it came to that, would simply come earlier than I expected. It was coming anyway. You are not afraid. I have made peace with the thing fear was protecting me from. After that, what is there to be afraid of?" The Lord sat with this. He was not a cruel man. He did not threaten Ichiro in any real way. He did something more interesting. He looked at Ichiro with the quality of attention that powerful men rarely give to unpowerful men. The quality of attention reserved for something you are genuinely trying to understand rather than merely use. And eventually said, "You are something I did not know existed. Many do not. And you carry it lightly. I carry it the way I carry everything, without gripping." The Lord nodded slowly. "You may go," he said, "with my respect, which you did not ask for and do not need, but which I give anyway." Ichiro bowed once, left. He walked out of the town the same afternoon. He did not think about the Lord again, not because he was cold, because the encounter had ended the moment it had ended, and there was nothing inside it that continued to grip him. He had not won anything. He had not lost anything. No, he had simply been himself in a room with a powerful man, and the powerful man had found, as all powerful men eventually find when they meet such a man, that there was no lever, nothing to press, nothing to threaten, nothing to offer that would move a man who had already released the handle the whole system depends on. Now, here, your life. Not a lord's room, not a mountain teacher with decades of patience, not a medieval Japan in which the lever was literal and the blade was real. Your life, where the levers are subtler but no less real, the job you cannot risk losing, the approval you cannot imagine life without, the image of yourself you would do almost anything to preserve. Each of these is a handle. Each of them is being held at this moment are by someone or something that knows it exists, even if they have never consciously named it. Here is the one thing. Tonight, just for 10 minutes, sit and ask one question. If everything I am currently afraid of losing were lost tomorrow, what would I still do with my life that I am doing now? Not as a fantasy, not as a thought experiment, as an inventory. What would remain? What would I still get up for? What would I still give my hours to? What would I still refuse to do, regardless of what was threatened? The answer to that question, honestly sat with, without decoration, is the man underneath your handles. And that man is who you are when nothing is gripping you. The closer you move your daily life toward him, the fewer handles you carry. And the fewer handles you carry, the fewer things the world can use to move you. And Ichiro lived into old age. He never took a position, never accepted patronage, never built the kind of life that shows up in the histories of powerful men. He was, by the standards of his time and ours, nobody. He was also, and this is the thing the histories do not record, because the histories cannot see it, one of the very few men of his generation who had become fully, completely without qualification, his own, belonging to no lord, belonging to no ambition, belonging to no fear, belonging simply to the day he was currently walking through, which is the only thing any man ever has, and the only thing worth becoming free enough to actually inhabit. The lantern-lit room is empty now. The lord who could not find the lever sits alone, considering what he has just encountered. The swordsman who offered no terms has walked out into the night, onto a road that belongs to no one, toward no destination he is gripping, through a life that nothing can control, because he has quietly, patiently, across many mountain mornings, released every handle the world knew how to reach for. And the world, which only has power through the handles it finds, has nothing left to do with him, except let him walk. If this loosened one handle in you, leave one word below.